Otto Lucas was the founder and owner of a highly successful London millinery company. He opened his showroom and workroom on Bond Street in the early 1930s, and it closed after his death in 1971. Otto was born in 1903 into a Jewish-German family. He learnt the millinery trade in Paris and Berlin before business brought him to London in the early 1930s, and at this point he was effectively stranded in London because of the rise of Nazism in Central Europe. And as a gay Jewish man, it would have been incredibly dangerous for him to return to his home country. But Otto was a talented businessman, and he managed to grow his company to be both financially successful and to have international renown.
Hats are a must this summer, says leading designer Otto Lucas. For dresses have never been so plain and unadorned, so you just have to let all your excitement go to your head.
He wasn't a hands-on designer, but he had a natural eye for design, and he hired the best people in the business to work for him. His employees remember him as being fierce, maybe a little bit feared, but have always said that when it came to hats, his judgment was always spot on. The Otto Lucas company made fashionable high-end hats that were sold to customers directly through the showroom on Bond Street, in retailers across London and around the world. He was an incredibly well-connected man. He made hats for all of the best-known fashion designers of the day, and his work was featured on the front cover of British Vogue at least 12 times. He also put London on the map. At this time, Paris was seen as the centre of the world for millinery, but Otto Lucas managed to really bring London into the forefront of the millinery world, partly by persuading American buyers to come to his showroom in London. We have 3 Otto Lucas hats in our collection. These 2 belong to a woman called Anne Marcus, who was from a large Jewish family who lived in East London. And she was a very fashionable woman, so I think she would have picked these 2 designs very carefully. My favourite thing about these hats is the matching hat pins, which just shows the sort of level of quality and detail that an Otto Lucas customer could expect. This 3rd hat was from an Otto Lucas Junior range, sold in Harrods. This means that it would have been sold at a slightly lower price point, making it available to a wider range of customers. Otto Lucas was a very private man, and this was probably out of a need to protect himself. Anti-Semitism was rife, and it was dangerous to be an openly gay man in England before the 1967 decriminalisation of homosexual acts. We do get to learn a little bit about Otto Lucas, the private person, from his employee, Susie Hopkins, and from his long-term partner, Rolf Anderson, who was recently interviewed by the academic Anna Nyberg. We learn from them that he was a real Anglophile, that he loved opera and poetry and champagne and his Savile Row suits, and he took great pleasure from his country house, Hush Heath Manor, where he enjoyed spending time in the gardens. Susie Hopkins was very lucky to be invited there for a weekend in the late 1960s, and she wrote the following in a letter to her mother. Downstairs, the dining room table was laid sparkling with candles. I had never seen so much silver anywhere before or since. My boss, bad-tempered all week, was relaxed, good-humoured, almost charming. Interesting guests of diverse ages assembled, mostly men, all elegantly dressed, a scene straight out of an English novel. And after dinner, we listened to poetry and Maria Callas records. Coffee was served in the drawing room, with the open fire crackling away, burning old hat blocks. So from this we can see that Otto Lucas was really part of the establishment. It's a picture of English gentility and him enjoying the finer things in life. In contrast, perhaps, he was also a member of the notorious Colony Room Club in Soho.
The Colony Room Club was a tiny little drinking club on the first floor of a Georgian house. It was about 20 foot long by about 15 feet wide. It was a tiny little kingdom run by Muriel Belcher, a lesbian from Birmingham, with her West Indian girlfriend. This was just after the Second World War, when homosexuality was illegal and lots of things were frowned upon. It was a very sort of grey, depressed place, post-war London. There's rationing on, not much colour about, lots of bomb sites because of all the bombing, and in here is this little oasis. Well, we know that Otto was very good friends with Muriel, and I think their time goes back before the Colony Room. Muriel had previously run 2 different clubs called the Sphinx and the Music Box. Lots of people then were sort of refugees one way or another. Actually, they all went to Soho, was to sort of remake themselves. The people ran away from regional areas because of their sexuality or what their interests were, and they all sort of congregated to Soho. It was where the sort of people hung out who was sort of didn't really kind of fit in anywhere else. She was his walker and vice versa. Because they were both gay, there was things you had to be seen, or you could only get to sort of receptions or certain functions. You were expected to turn up with a partner of the opposite sex, you know, so they sort of helped each other out that way. Well, unlike other clubs, the thing about the Collier was you could actually be yourself. Francis Bacon said that was the great thing about it, because all we really want to be is ourselves. So there was a great deal of wit up there, and Muriel was had quite an acid tongue. So you could actually go there and relax. There was other clubs, but you couldn't actually relax. And of course, homosexuality was illegal then. And even though the club actually wasn't a gay club, because Muriel made sure she kept a good mixture of people in there, that's why it was such an important cultural place. You know, people just felt totally at home and could relax there. So Muriel might say something, "You'd be much happier in a pair of high heels and a dress, dear, get out of those trousers," she might say to a businessman standing in the bar. And there was a real mixture there. He would have sort of met, you know, the director of the Bank of England there. There was a real mixture of people.
Very sadly, Otto Lucas died in 1971 in a tragic plane crash, and the company closed immediately following his death. One of his employees was interviewed in the newspaper and said, as he was unmarried, we do not know what will happen to the business. Despite the fact that him and Rolf Anderson had been together for at least a decade, this was not a recognised relationship in a legal sense. Otto Lucas is not a household name today, and I do wonder whether this is partly because of his need to protect himself, and it does make you wonder what his legacy would have been if he could have perhaps been a little bit more open about who he was. However, he is well remembered by the people who worked for him, by the milliners that he trained, who became very important in their own right, and of course by those who knew him. And we're so lucky that his hats survive in a number of museum collections, and it's wonderful for us to have these 3 hats here at the Museum of London, representing not only him but everybody else who worked for the Otto Lucas company.